Hi, you lot. Welcome back to another Scotty podcast. We've got questions from community that have been burning holes in the inbox, and today we're tackling big ones. We're talking publishers versus developers and why some companies can't seem to divorce without tripping over their own shoelaces. We're talking about whether pre-orders, microtransactions and battle passes are necessary evils or just plain evil. We're diving into whether live service developers are secretly breaking their own games to justify the jobs, which is a conspiracy theory I genuinely love. And we're covering what games you should be excited about in 2026, plus some free games you can grab right now if you're skint after Christmas. So grab a brew, settle in, and let's talk. First question comes from Ages444, who asks, who are amazing publishers but terrible developers? And vice versa. I asked this because I think Team 17 are amazing publishers, but when they took over development for Hell Let Loose, they had a rough first year which led me to stop playing. Ages, mate, you've hit on something that drives me absolutely mental, and you picked probably best example to illustrate it. Team 17 is genuinely one of the most fascinating case studies in modern gaming because on paper, publishing track record is outstanding. We're talking about a company that brought us Worms, which is a franchise that's been going for 30 years and still somehow haven't run out of ways to make cartoon explosives entertaining. They published Blasphemous, which is a brutal, gorgeous Spanish-flavoured Metroidvania that had no rate being as good as it was. They published Dredge, which is a fishing horror game that sounds ridiculous until you play it and realise it's one of the most unsettling experiences you've had in years. Overcooked, Moving Art, Escapist, the publishing portfolio is genuinely impressive. But here's where it all goes sideways. Hell Let Loose were originally developed by Black Matter Studios, an Australian outfit who created this beautiful, brutal World War II tactical shooter that were clearly a labour of love. Game had a community, it had momentum, it were doing well in early access. Then Team 17 acquired publishing rights, and eventually took over full development. And what happened? Absolute chaos. Update 13.5, first major patch under Team 17's full control, introduced game-breaking bugs that persisted for months. We're talking infantry moving faster than tanks. A prawn mechanic so broken players nicknamed it Slip and Slide. A wiggle run exploited that made you impossible to hit. Loadout resets. Connection errors. Voice chat completely dying. And my personal favourite, artillery guns spawning buried underground on Kharkov Man. Underground! Guns went dirt. How does that even happen? And community was screaming about it, providing details, bug reports, begging for fixes. And Team 17's response was to keep pushing the game towards more arcade-like experience to appeal to a wider audience. Classic publisher brain. We've got a dedicated hardcore community who love this game, so let's alienate them to chase people who aren't playing it. Brilliant strategy. Really worked out. Then came 2022, and Team 17 announced MetaWorms, an NFT project. Remember when every company lost their minds and thought blockchain gaming what future? Team 17 jumped on that bandwagon so hard they nearly broke it. Backlash were immediate and brutal. Multiple partner studios, developers who had games published by Team 17, came out publicly and said they wanted not to do it and had considered the relationship with the company. Team 17 cancelled project within days, but damage were done. By 2023, they'd cut a third out at workforce, over 50 employees from QA, HR, and IT departments. Developers who were left said publicly that they weren't sure how the company could function anymore. CEO stepped down. Whole thing were a masterclass in how to take a respected publishing brand and drive it into a wall at full speed. Now, counter-argument is that Hell Let Loose is still alive. It's still got players. And that's technically true, but it's worth noting that game's current population owes more to Game Pass and Epic's free giveaway than it does to Team 17's stewardship. They didn't grow the game, they just didn't kill it fast enough for it to die before other platforms propped it up. Want another example? Let's talk about 1047 Games and Splitgate. Here's a studio that started as two lads in a university dorm room, built a game that combined Halo-style arena combat with Portal mechanics, and somehow made it work. Original Splitgate peaked at nearly 68,000 concurrent players on Steam in 2021. They raised over $100 million in funding. They were darlings at indie scene. Then they decided to make Splitgate 2, and everything fell apart. They came out at Summer Game Fest 2025 with CEO wearing a Make FPS Great Again hat, which regardless of your politics were tone-deaf marketing at best. They launched with $70 microtransaction bundles in a free-to-play game. games shipped missing basic features like leaderboards. Player reception was so bad they literally unlaunched game a month after release, pulling it back into beta, laid off staff twice, and shut down original Splitgate servers to save money. They relaunched it as Splitgate Arena Reloaded in December, and as of this week, they're averaging about 500 concurrent players on Steam. For comparison, original Splitgate 2 launch hit 26,000. That's a 98% drop. Studio came out this week saying Steam charts don't measure fun, which is true. But they do measure whether servers stay online and whether your staff keeps the jobs. Now flip it around. Who's a great publisher? Evolver Digital. These mad bastards have built an entire brand on being anti-publisher publisher. They've let developers keep their IP, they don't meddle with creative vision, they pick weird, interesting projects and give them room to breathe. Hotline Miami, Enter Gungeon, Guest Tour, Loop Hero, Fall Guys before Epic bought Mediatonic. The track record is genuinely ridiculous. Difference is philosophy. Devolver treats publishing as a service to developers. Team 17 and 1047 treated development as something they could just figure out because they'd seen it done. And it turns out watching someone bake a cake don't mean you can run a bakery. Thanks for the question, Aegis. You give me plenty of material for this week. And speaking of Splitgate, next question comes from Pyro Friendly Arsonist 9195. Oh, asks, hey Scotty, what's with people using Splitgate Steam charts as gospel? Personally, it's ridiculous. Mate, that's ultimate question, and you're right to call it out. But it's Steam. Steam is the only platform that publicly shows player metrics for any game. It's one window we've got entire games actually performing in terms of active players, not just sales figures that publishers cherry pick when it suits them. So when people look at Steam charts, they're using only data that's actually available. Trends you see on Steam do generally reflect trends on other platforms because player behaviour don't magically change depending on where you're playing. Now, 1047 Games came out this week as a statement saying Steam charts don't measure fun because the numbers are absolutely dire. We're talking about 491 concurrent players at time of writing, with 24-hour peak barely scraping over 1,000. For context, when original Splitgate hit its stride back in 2021, it peaked at nearly 68,000 concurrent players. When Splitgate 2 launched in June 2025, it hit around 26,000. Arena Reloaded relaunched in December, 2,297. That's a 90% drop from Splitgate 2's peak. But here's where it gets interesting, because we actually do have some console data now. According to Linear Analytics, Splitgate 2 Reloaded had a brief spike to 50,000 daily active users on Xbox and PlayStation post-launch. Sounds decent, right? Except Linear also noted that most of those players were returning from Splitgate 2, not new users. So they're not growing, they're just shuffling the same shrinking deck of cards. However, logic about Steam reflecting all platforms falls apart when you're talking about free-to-play games. On console, free-to-play absolutely dominates. Sakana's data shows that. Fortnite, Call of Duty, GTA 5, Roblox and Minecraft are top 5 most played games on both PlayStation and Xbox in the US for 2025. Exactly the same as 2024. Free-to-play is king on console in a way that doesn't always translate to Steam numbers. So, is Splitgate dying? On Steam, absolutely. On console, maybe not as fast, but trajectory great. Harsh reality is this. Low player counts create a death spiral. Fewer players means longer queue times. Longer queue times means wider skill gaps in matches. Frustration sets in. People leave, and spiral tightens. Steam charts don't measure fun. It's a lovely sentiment, but they do measure whether your servers stay online and whether your studio keeps lights on. Time will tell if they can turn it round, but right now, not looking good. Thanks for the question, Pyro. Next, we're back with Ages444 again, who's clearly trying to get his money worth this week. He asks, what's a necessary evil in gaming? In my opinion, pre-orders. You're putting your trust in a game or studio that'll be worth money, and it can be a risk sometimes. But I've seen a lot of people saying no pre-orders, but they pre-order at the moment they can. Right, Ages, I'm going to push back on you here, because my position's this. There's no necessary evils in gaming. None. Everything that gets labelled a necessary evil is actually just things that benefit publisher at expense of players, dressed up with enough marketing to make us think we need it. Let's start with pre-orders. Original purpose of pre-ordering were practical. Back when games came on physical discs and retailers had limited shelf space, pre-ordering guaranteed you'd get a copy on launch day instead of walking into a game and being told they'd sold out. Fair enough, that makes sense. But we're in 2026 now. Digital distribution exists. Steam don't run out of copies. PlayStation Store doesn't have a warehouse that empties. Practical justification for pre-orders evaporated a decade ago, and what replaced it were pure marketing manipulation. Publishers figured out that if they could get your money afore reviews drop, afore word of mouth spread, before anyone could warn you that game were broken or unfinished or just plain bad, they made a sale that couldn't be undone. That's not a service to you, that's a trap. Kotaku said it a few years ago. Companies want you on hook before anyone has had a chance to warn you off it. And I'll be honest with you, I pre-ordered Battlefield 6. I did it as a message to Call of Duty, thinking if I put my money where my mouth is, maybe industry would notice. You know what happened? Game launch broken, guys patched it into a playable state, and Call of Duty kept doing exactly what Call of Duty does, cause my 60 quid didn't register as alt other than another sale on a spreadsheet. Pre-orders don't add value to games. They don't make games better. They don't fund development cause money comes in after the game is already finished. All they do is reward publishers for marketing and punish players for trusting them. Now microtransactions? This is where I have to draw a line, because context matters. In a free-to-play game, microtransactions are a business model. Game costs naught to download, so revenue has to come from somewhere. Fortnite wants to sell you a dancing banana skin for 15 quid. That's their rate, and it's your choice whether it's worth it to you. Game's free, servers cost money, I get it. But in a premium game, in something like Call of Duty where you've already paid £70 for privilege of playing, microtransactions aren't a necessary evil. They're just greed. Pure, uncut corporate greed. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 shipped as a full-price game with a battle pass, seasonal store rotations, and bundles costing more than game itself. There were a Godzilla vs. Kong crossover where a full bundle cost over $100. $100 for cosmetics in a game you already bought. Bundles were literally more expensive than actual game it was sold inside. And Ubisoft, bless them, came out in their annual financial report this year and said that microtransactions in premium games make player experience more fun. They actually wrote that down in a document that shareholders were meant to read. Someone in a boardroom looked at that sentence and thought, yeah, this is good, let's publish this. Battle passes are evolution, and they're cleverer than loot boxes, because they feel like you earned something rather than gambling. But there's still exploitation dressed up in a progress bar. Entire model is built on FOMO, like new pass now or miss out forever. Play every day or you won't finish track. Grind challenges or waste money you already spent. It's not fun, it's a second job that you're paying for privilege you're doing. And here's the thing that really gets me. None of this is necessary. Games made money for pre-order bonuses. Games made money for battle passes. Games made money when you paid them once, and that will end at transaction. The idea that modern development costs require these practices is a myth perpetuated by companies posting record profits while laying off thousands of developers. Activision Blizzard made $4 billion in microtransaction revenue in a single year and still laid off staff. EA made over $1 billion from Ultimate Team and still shuttered studios. Money ain't going to fund development, it's going to shareholders, executives, and stock buybacks. We're not funding future gaming. So no, Aegis, there are no necessary evils. There's just evils that's been normalised because we kept buying it anyway. Right, let's clench palate with something positive. Free games. Because if publishers are going to nickel and dime us everywhere else, least we can do is take advantage when they're giving stuff away. First up, Epic Games Store. This week's freebies is Bloons TD6, available until January 15th. Now some of you might already have this because Epic gave it away before, but if you missed it, here's your chance. It's a tower defense game about monkeys popping balloons. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's genuinely one of the best in genre. Nearly 220,000 reviews on Steam, overwhelmingly positive. Developers at Ninja Kiwi have been updating it constantly for years, adding new maps, new heroes, new mechanics. It's kind of game where you tell yourself, just one more round, and suddenly it's 3 in the morning and you've got work tomorrow. Highly recommended if you've got any love for strategy games at all. Next, Prime Gaming. If you've got Amazon Prime, you've got access to free games every month. January's lineup is actually pretty solid. Headline act is Sid Meier's Civilization 6, which needs no introduction. It's Civilization. It's a game that ended more friendships than Monopoly and ruined more sleep schedules than newborn children. Yeah, Civilization came out, and yeah, some people think Civ 6 is still better game. Either way, it's free. It's yours to keep forever, and it'll consume hundreds of hours of your life if you let it. You claim it through Epic Games Store. And finally, Reflections of Life, Dark Architect, Collector's Edition, which is a hidden object puzzle adventure. Not my cup of tea personally, but if you're into that genre, free is free. Patterns through Amazon Games app. Worth noting that Prime Gaming's also adding games to Luna, the cloud streaming service. Madden NFL 26 is coming on January 10th if you fancy some American football. Plus stuff like Death Stranding Director's Cut, Alan Wake, and Hot Wheels Unleashed 2 if you want to stream rather than download. So there you go, at least 4 quality games that price are not. Or price are an Amazon subscription you probably already have. Go claim them before they're gone. Now then, back to Ages 444, who apparently decided is going to dominate this episode. Fair play, mate. Your third question is, when developers update a live service game and fix some problems but break others that were perfectly fine beforehand, I can't help but suspect that they're breaking game on purpose, so they have a reason to keep the jobs. Basically, the live service companies break something during an update so they can keep the jobs. Ages. I love this question because it's exactly kind of conspiracy theory my brain gravitates towards when I'm 3 pints down and watching another Call of Duty patch somehow break reload animation on guns that hadn't even been touched in months. But here's the thing, while I understand suspicion, I don't think it's intentional. And I say that not because I trust these companies, but because actual explanation is somehow even more frustrating. The phenomenon you're describing has a name in software development. It's called regression. A regression bug is when a change in one part of code unintentionally breaks something else that were previously working. And it happens constantly. Not because developers are stupid or malicious, but because modern games are incomprehensibly complex systems where everything is connected to everything else in ways that aren't always obvious. Here's a stat that might surprise you. Studies of Linux kernel, one of the most scrutinized and carefully managed code bases in the world, found that roughly 50% of all bugs are regressions. Half. And that's in software maintained by some of the best engineers on planet with decades of experience and rigorous testing procedures. Now imagine a Call of Duty game with millions of lines of code, annual release cycles, 3 different studios working in different components, and shareholders demanding features ship on schedule regardless of whether they're ready. Real culprit in malice. It's compressed testing schedules. When you've got a live service game that needs to push updates every few weeks to keep engagement up, there simply ain't enough time to test every possible interaction between every system. You fix bugs that players are screaming about, you do your regression testing on systems you think are related, and you ship it. Then it turns out gun reload system is somehow connected to ladder climbing system through some spaghetti code from 3 years ago, and now everyone's falling through map whenever they try to climb out. This is what happens when management prioritizes speed over quality, when directive from above is ship update on Tuesday no matter what. Developers don't have luxury of saying, actually we need another week to make sure we haven't broken out. They ship it, pray no catastrophic happens. Start working on hotfix before patch even goes live. Now, is there an argument that live service model itself creates perverse incentives? Absolutely. If your entire business model depends on constantly updating game to keep players engaged, you need a reason to keep updating. If game were ever truly finished and stable, what would team do? In that sense, churn of patches and fixes and new content and new bugs does serve purpose of justifying ongoing development costs. But that's not same as deliberately sabotaging your own product. It's more like natural consequences of a business model that demands constant activity regardless of whether that activity is actually beneficial. Game has to keep changing because change is what justifies ongoing investment, even if some of those changes make things worse. There's a principle called Hanlon's razor that I think applies here. Never attribute to malice what can be adequately explained by incompetence. Or, in this case, never attribute to conspiracy what can be adequately explained by management incompetence, compressed schedules, technical debt, and a business model that treats games as ongoing service rather than finished products. So no, Aegis, I don't think they're breaking games on purpose. I think they're breaking games because the system the work we're in makes it nearly impossible not to, which honestly might be even more depressing. Next question comes from Asian Persuasion, who asks, what are you most excited for in 2026? Do you think GTA will ever release? And will COD get its shit together? Right, let's break this down. What am I most excited for? Honestly, it's a variety. We've got horror, shooters, racing, stuff across board. So there's no single game I'm pinning all my hopes on. That's a healthier place to be than waiting for one Messiah title to save year. But hold that thought. Now GTA 6, will it ever release? Officially, Rockstar have it locked in for November 19, 2026. That's third delay, by the way. It was supposed to be autumn 2025. Then they pushed it to May 2026. Now it's November. 13 years since GTA 5 came out and we're still waiting. But here's some fresh information. Jason Schreier has reported that Rockstar themselves are unsure they're going to make that November date. Content in game is reportedly not complete. Developers are still finalising missions and making cuts for final build. And according to Schreier, Rockstar would rather let release dates slip again than put out an incomplete product. So, that November 2026 date, I won't chisel it into stone just yet. Former Rockstar developer Mike York came out and said the game has reached a breaking point with fans. And there's only so many times you can push something back before people just stop caring. Hype can only sustain itself for so long before it curdles into resentment. Rockstar knows this. Whether they act on it, or whether they delay again anyway, another matter entirely. As for Call of Duty getting its shit together? Nope. Absolutely not. Categorically, unequivocally, no. And I said that with receipts. Black Ops 7 launched in November to a 35% positive rating on Steam. Campaign got slated. There's been backlash over AI-generated assets, and sales are down double digits compared to Black Ops 6. Remember how Treyarch and Activision made a big song and dance about Black Ops 7 being more grounded, more authentic, a return to form after cosmetic circus of previous years? I called it at the time. I said get until end of Season 1 and it'll be right back to where it was. Well, Season 1 Reloaded just dropped, and guess what's in it? Fallout cosmetics. You can now run around Nuketown dressed as a cowboy ghoul or wearing a Vault Dweller jumpsuit. Over Christmas, they had snowman cosmetics. Snowmen, fainting in a wire. What happened to Grounded? What happened to maintaining visual identity at franchise? Gone. Out window before Season 1 even finished. They couldn't even make it 3 months without turning getting back into a fancy dress party. So will Call of Duty get its shit together? So have no from me. Thanks for the question, mate. Final question this week comes from Thirkin L1, who asks, what games are you looking forward to in 2026? Alright, Thirkin 2026 is looking absolutely stacked, and I've got a proper list for you. Let's start with Reanimal, dropping February 13th. This is Tarsier Studios, mad Swedes who made Little Nightmares, and they've gone even darker this time. You're playing as a brother and sister trying to escape corrupted island full of nightmarish creatures. And the whole thing is built around co-op with shared camera design to maximise claustrophobia. They've said it's meant to be more terrifying than Little Nightmares, and considering those games have me sleeping with lights on, that's a bold claim. Game's already gone gold, so no delay nonsense here. If you got a mate who enjoys being psychologically tormented with you, this is your Valentine's Day sorted. Next up, Marvel Talk on Fighting Souls. Arc system works. Legends behind Guilty Gear and Dragon Ball FighterZ are doing a 4v4 Marvel fighter published by Sony. You start with one character and an assist, then unlock your full team mid-match through wall breaks and damage accumulation. It's not coming to EVO 2026, which means we're looking at second half of the year. But closed betas have had rollback netcode and reception's been mental. Axis have said they're planning 10 years of support for this thing, so if they nail roster and dump budget balance, this could be Marvel Fighter we've been begging for since Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite face planted into obscurity. Carmageddon Road Shift lands February 6th, and yeah, Vehicular Manslaughter is officially back on menu. Developed by 34 Big Things, round that lot, this is a roguelike combat racer set in 2050 where zombies outnumber humans 10,000 to 1. You're racing through a post-apocalyptic wasteland, smashing rivals, mowing down undead, and upgrading your rust bucket with 15 vehicles, 13 weapon classes, and over 80 perks. It's 40 quid, It's coming to everything, including Switch 2. And if physics engine holds together, this could be more fun you have committing digital atrocities since original Carmageddon had parents writing letters to newspapers. Halo campaign evolved. Chief is coming to PlayStation for the first time in history. And honestly, I never thought I'd see it day. This is a ground-up remake of combat evolved in Unreal Engine 5, with 3 brand new prequel missions, 4-player online co-op with crossplay, and 2-player split screen on consoles. No multiplayer, just pure campaign focus. Halo Studios, formerly 343 Industries, calling this a fresh starting point for the franchise. And if they can capture that original magic with our open-world blow that killed Infinite's momentum, this could be resurrection Halo desperately needs. John Carpenter's Toxic Commando, it's March 12th, and this is exactly what it sounds like. Horror Master himself worked on story and composed a soundtrack for a Left 4 Dead-style co-op shooter about mercenaries fighting a sludge god and its zombie horde. Saber Interactive are using the World War Z swarm tech, so expect absolute carnage on screen. 4-player co-op with full crossplay, 80s VHS aesthetic, synthwave soundtrack, and monsters that look like the Preorders 2 album cover. It's not subtle, it's not clever, it's just big dumb fun with John Carpenter's name on it. And sometimes that's exactly what you need. 007 First Light were meant to be March, but got pushed to May 27th for polish. IO Interactive, Hitman people are doing a Bond origin story with a 26-year-old James Bond. This isn't based on any film, it's a completely original story where you earn your 00 status. IO have said they want this to kick off a trilogy, and given how well they handled stealth and social infiltration in Hitman, this could finally be a Bond game that captures what makes character work. Resident Evil Requiem drops February 27th, and Capcom are going back to Raccoon City. You're playing as FBI analyst Grace Ashcroft and Leon Kennedy, switching between first and third person at will. Set 30 years after the city got nuked, Grace is being stalked by a monster throughout the game, Mr. X style, and all things built an RE engine with that gorgeous Capcom horror atmosphere. Over 4 million wishlists already. If it's anywhere near as good as RE2 Remake or Village, we're eating well. Forza Horizon 6 is finally going to Japan, and I could weep. This has been most requested location since series started, and Playground Games are delivering Tokyo, Mount Fuji, Hokkaido, 12 mountain passes, drift circuits, and largest map in franchise history. Seasonal changes will actually affect handling this time, not just visuals. Game Pass Day 1. Tomb Raider Legacy or Atlantis is Crystal Dynamics remaking original 1996 game in Unreal Engine 5. They're calling it a reimagining rather than a straight remake, modernising gameplay while keeping tone and atmosphere original. Peru, Greece, Egypt and Atlantis, all rebuilt with 30 years of graphical advancement. And finally, Star Wars Galactic Racer. Former Burnout and Need for Speed developers at Fuse Games are making a pod racing game set after Fallout Empire. You're racing speed bikes, land speeders, and most certainly pod racers across iconic planets like Jakku and Andor Prime. Trailer ends with an older Sebulba, that cheating dub bastard from Phantom Menace, so callbacks are strong. Honourable mentions go to Busby 4D, because apparently that's happening, Mega Man Star Force Legacy Collection for DS nostalgics, Samurai Pizza Cat's Blast from Past, which is real and I'm still processing it, Starship Troopers Ultimate Big War for Helldivers Crowd, and Fable, which has been 15 years coming. So fucking hell, 2026 is looking ridiculous. Thanks for the question, and thanks for being a member. Along with other legends, James Farmer, Silver Bullet 90, Asian Persuasion, Abapical, Scotty Cedar, and Mayhem. Truly appreciated, guys. Thank you. And to you subscribers on YouTube, all 1,995 of you. Yeah, I lost a couple this week, but I don't chase metrics. I still appreciate those who stick around. If any of that got your brain firing, if you agreed, disagreed, or want to tell me I'm completely wrong about something, that's what comments are for. I read them. Sometimes I even respond when I'm feeling sociable. Like, subscribe and all that bollocks. Drop your comments and questions below. Remember, pre-orders are a trap, microtransactions are theft with extra steps, and if your game breaks after every patch, it's probably not a conspiracy, it's just Wednesday. I'll see you next time, you magnificent.